Hi, thanks for stopping by. I must say right off the bat, thank you to everyone that came over and watched that other video I put out just a week or so ago. Mike gave me a nice little nudge and a shout out to his people, and many of you came over, took time to watch that, liked it, and commented on it, and that was very kind of you. I really do appreciate that. I can't say enough good things about Mike Bayer. Just what a stellar man. Just and every time he puts out a video, I watch, and even though he's talking to people that are experiencing things that I'm not experiencing or yet to experience, I still find a lot in what he has to say. And I'm grateful that YouTube has brought that man into my life. I truly am. And I'm looking forward to the day I get to California again. It should be soon. And I'm in the area working, and I can reach out and say hi and see if I can take him to dinner. That seems to be a thing. So that said, I need to explain a little something about me and my personality. It's not for everyone, and I know that. In fact, on my carry-on bag, that when I travel every week to go to work somewhere, I had that on my bag. It's a little tag that says "I'm not for everyone," and the other side says "Apparently, I'm dramatic." But I think I'm less dramatic than ever. But I found myself in a really weird spot about 10 years ago. I found myself very tired, and I just felt like there was this weight on me, and I just didn't know what it was. And one morning, I am in the bathroom here at the house. We have two master bedrooms in our house, and then we have other bathrooms as well. And because our marriage demands it, I use the bathroom in the far side of the house to get ready and brush my teeth and all that. And the ensuite that's on our master, my wife takes that. But on this particular morning, I was in there and I was looking at myself in the mirror. And I just kind of had this tired look, and I'm still fighting it. But I had this really tired look, and I was really genuinely tired. And my wife had written something in grease pencil on the mirror for herself, a little affirmation. Now, my wife will occasionally pick up a self help book or something like that. She's an artist, and she's always looking for something that helps unlock some potential that she has, maybe get over a creative block she's experiencing. But she had written in grease pencil on the mirror a little affirmation that she would see every day. And this day, I happened to see it. And it was very simply said, I create my own reality. I create my own reality. And that hit me at that time, which is unusual because I don't learn life lessons the moment they're given. I'm the person that 5 years afterwards, while I'm ruminating on something else, goes, oh, that's what that meant. Boy, I wish I implemented this a little sooner. I would have saved myself some grief. But at this time, it hit me, and it hit me hard. I create my own reality. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit to when I was 15 years old. And again, I'm 59 for a little while longer till the end of December. But when I was about 15 years old, maybe 14, maybe 16, I don't know, give or take, I was in high school with my friends, and we had just discovered comedy records, albums, vinyl. Remember those? We had just discovered those of comedians, and we couldn't get enough. So we would buy these records at home, or we would buy them, take them home, record them to cassette, bring a cassette in, and we had a cassette player, and we would gather around a conference table, in a quiet corner of the library and play these just loud enough so we could hear it, but not loud enough to get thrown out. And we loved it. We listened to this stuff, both sides, backwards, forwards. We had it memorized. And this was great stuff. This was comedians like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Red Fox. And even though none of us were into drugs and none of my social group, we ever got into that stuff, we listened to a lot of Cheech and Chong. And we kind of, mimicked the jokes they were telling, even though we didn't really understand them. We understood them enough to get the humor, but we mimicked them. And then when Steve Martin's album hit, Wild and Crazy Guy, that was so much more than just King Tut. I mean, that he went really deep on that. And in some of his other albums, it's a comedy that you probably aren't used to seeing from Steve Martin, the actor or the comedian, prior to his acting career. And all of these albums that we were listening to, and we were just consuming them. I mean, we just could not get enough of them. Started to shape the way we spoke and the way we talked. and how we talked and how we interacted with other people. And when you're 15 years old and you're listening to George Carlin, that's awesome. But it's also a double-edged sword because the things that he's talking about, his Bronx personality can be very sharp. And when you're 15 years old, the last thing you want to do to Father Brokaw or Canon Hay is be a little sharp. It just doesn't really, it doesn't convey. But it did. It shaped us. It shaped the way we spoke. And for me especially, it shaped the way that I talked about things and how I looked at things. And it was great. It was just really wonderful to have a world knowledge, that I couldn't have gotten. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. There wasn't even email. Everything we had came off our 3 or 4 channels that we were able to pick up on the antenna for our televisions at home. So this was eye-opening for me. And I probably took it a little too far. I'm pretty sure I did. But anyhow, we get a little further down the line. Now we're, into the late 80s. I'm out of school. And we have a new thing happening. We have this television show called Cheers that comes on. And they have a whole host of characters. And they have 2 kind of surly, grumpy characters. Rhea Perlman's character, Carla, and Danny DeVito's character. And, I'm sorry, Danny DeVito was on Taxi. I sometimes conflate the fact that he was on Cheers. But also on Cheers, you had Norm, who was sarcastic, always had a comeback. And I thought that was great. So again, this starts seeping into my personality. Okay, fair enough. I'm in my 20s now, and we're moving along. Then we come into the 90s, and we have this show come on called Friends. And there's a character, Matthew Perry's character, Chandler Bing. He was always sarcastic and funny and irony, and was always making jokes about the irony of whatever the situation was. Okay, fair enough. And that seeped into my personality. And then Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld, the great pointer outer of the absurd and the ironic. And you know how he was. Did you ever notice this? Did you ever notice that? How come this? How come that? Here's the difference between LA and New York. Typical stuff. And Jerry set the stage for a lot of lightweight comics to come behind him. I mean, Jerry did it great. And some of the others just, whatever. And then we get into the 2000s, and there's Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. And he, another ironic person, and snarky as well. And again, I didn't really watch a lot of it, but I identified with it, and it kind of crept into me a little more. Oh, and along the way, back in the late 80s and the 90s, Dennis Miller from Saturday Night Live, famous for his rants. Ranting. Remember that when ranting comics were out there? They would just rant. Here's what it makes me angry. And they would go on and on about it. And then Dennis Miller did that. But then he would also use really obscure pop culture sub-references to illustrate his point. And even if you didn't understand them, you kind of knew they were funny. And again, kind of crept into my personality. So here I am in my 30s. Or there I was in my 30s. And I was ironic, and I was snarky, and I was grumpy, and I was pointing out all the irony in everything, the absurdity in everything. And how I never got fired from a job is beyond me. In fact, I'm this one position I had, I can't believe they didn't. I know they wanted to, and they were always short-staffed, so they kept me on. But what I found out when I was looking in the mirror is my snarky, ironic, sarcastic personality had made the very short step across a line into bitterness. So now I was just a young man who was like a bitter, grumpy old man. And that had to have been such a burden for my friends. I can't believe I still have these people. I can count these people as friends. But it was a burden to them. And they just sort of, took it for granted. Jeff's a nice guy. I can take him or leave him. Something like that. But I got to the point where it was too much to keep up. It was too hard of a personality to keep feeding and keep performing. I kind of always felt like I was on, and it was wearing me down. And then suddenly, in the mirror, my wife had written, "I create my own reality." So if I was miserable and cranky and cantankerous, which I was, that was because I created it. I mean, there's a lot in the world that can affect a person to make them grumpy and cranky and cantankerous. But I had really no reason to let that affect me. By all measure, my life was good. Still is. So with that simple phrase that my wife had written on the mirror for herself, it hit me. And unlike me, that lesson sunk in at that moment. So I had to make a change. I had to make a change in my vocabulary. I had to make a change in the humor that I was putting out, the humor that I was consuming, and even the films I was consuming. I went on a violence diet. I love movies like Pulp Fiction and Die Hard. But as a person who enjoys shooting firearms here, I live in Florida, who enjoys that, I just couldn't take any more firearm movies or things that revolved around those things. And I didn't want to see any more people getting hurt on film for effect. So I went on a violence diet. And then I started changing my words. I intentionally started using 3 words or phrases. The words were, please, may I, and thank you. And I started doing this simply when I was ordering lunch. And I realized very quickly that people seemed to be relieved. You could almost see a little relief in people when you would say, hello, may I please have the grilled chicken sandwich? And thank you. It almost like servers sometimes and people that work retail and customer service, so they have a hard time with some of the less behaved people. And I think when you do that to somebody, you signal to them, I'm going to be a good customer. And I think we do have an obligation to be a good customer. The customer is not always right. Let's put an end to that. But with those 3 words, I started changing my life. Please, may I, and thank you. Now, the may I comes from the old thing that we all had when we were growing up, when you would raise your hand in the classroom and ask the teacher, can I go to the toilet? Can I go to the bathroom? And they would say, I don't know, can you? And then you would have to change and go, may I go to the toilet? And they would go, and you say, may I please go to the bathroom? And they would go, okay. And you would say, you'd start walking out, and they would go, and you would say, thank you. Remember all that stuff? Now, I had a mother who was very, very big on grammar and spelling and punctuation. She was a lead secretary for some governors in the state where we used to live. So she was heavily involved in that politic world. But it was her job to take these governors' words and polish them up and punctuate them and so forth. And she instilled that in us children. So I started doing that. The lessons that I kind of poo-pooed from the older people. So when I started changing up the way I spoke, please, may I, and thank you, I just noticed things. Not as much in the people I was speaking with, but it was changing me. And I felt like I was kinder. And subsequently, things that I found difficult became easy. And it wasn't because the person I was speaking to, when I was asking, may I and please and thank you, it wasn't that I was getting any better treatment from them, but something in me started to change. I started to feel a little better about myself. And with that came a little bit of calm. And it's something I'm looking for more calm in my life, especially right now with parents aging and career changing and whatever else goes on with that. But it was 3 simple words or phrases that changed my life, and I believe has changed my personality some. Now, another thing that's changing my personality is right here on YouTube. I don't know why I really started this. I mean, I started it with a reason, and I'll touch more on that later. But doing this, speaking to this camera and talking into a microphone, so my voice is a little, more elevated, because I do have a weak voice when you meet me in person. But doing this has allowed me to see myself the way others do. You can't get this kind of feedback from friends or Toastmasters. I mean, Toastmasters can really help. But to see yourself talking to you and seeing yourself the way other people see you and hear you is such an eye-opening experience. Because if you're looking in the mirror at yourself, the soon as you glance at your hands or whatever, you've lost focus of your eyes. And now everything's changing. But when you play yourself back on a video and audio, you can look at your hands, but yet the person talking to you, which is you, still remains eye contact. So the benefit to that is it's just, it literally floored me. I mean, I didn't know I did this. I mean, obviously it's easy because my elbow is on the table right now, so I have nothing to do with this. And I didn't know that I do these and my little isms and so forth. And sometimes I'll look off camera and in the middle of a sentence, you know, I may have known about it, but I never really knew what it looked like till now. Now those are the kind of things that I'm not changing. That's who I am. But changing up my personality on purpose, and not to make it fake, but to make it more genuine, make it more who I am, make it more reflective of the lessons the older people try to teach me. I've come to realize a little later in life that the older people who were teaching me these things weren't just grumpy old people that had to teach kids. They actually have lived this, and they've seen these lessons play out in real life. And speaking to people kindly, there's never a downside to that. So, with all of that said, I'm trying to be a little more gentle, a little more kind, and a little more genuine, because I think I'm a good guy. I sometimes say some stupid things and get some weird thoughts, but I'm a good guy. And I think if I just work harder on letting that guy be seen more often than the grumpy, sarcastic SOB, then I think we'll all be a little better off, including me. Me first, actually. I'm going to be a little selfish on this. This is mostly for me, but you're going to get the benefit of it as well. So if you understand that, if you felt like your entertainment and your environment has shaped your personality in ways that you're not really crazy about, I'd like to know if I'm alone in this. And I know I'm not, because it seems like every time I speak to somebody about this or something else that I may be experiencing, I'm not alone. And I don't think there's an emotion or experience that any one of us can go through that hasn't been gone through before by someone else and probably well documented. So anyhow, I'm trying, and I kind of like the result. It's fun. And this whole YouTube thing, this is a very small venture for me. This is a hobby, and I'm enjoying it as a hobby, first and foremost. Anything after that, well, we'll just see how that happens. Anyway, in the meantime, thanks for stopping in and letting me kind of get this out. It's good. It's good for all of us. All right, till next time, I'm out.